What if everything you were taught about money was already obsolete before your grandparents were born? What if inflation isn't an accident? What if debt isn't a mistake? What if the system works exactly as designed and that design is over 4,500 years old? 'Cause here's the uncomfortable question no economist wants to touch. What if the Great Pyramid of Giza was built for the dead, but for debt? Think about it. You work more hours than ever. Your money buys less every single year. Housing feels impossible. Savings feel pointless. And yet, we're told this is just modern complexity. It's too advanced for us to question, too technical to understand. But what if ancient civilizations already solved this puzzle and then weaponized it? What if the very logic controlling your paycheck, your mortgage, your credit score, was perfected long before central banks, before stock markets, before paper money even existed? Hidden inside the Great Pyramid is a mathematical structure so precise, so deliberate, that it mirrors the exact logic of modern banking systems. Not symbolically, not spiritually, financially, and once you see it, you absolutely cannot unsee it. Before we go any further, where are you watching from right now? Drop it in the comments below. This channel is a global community of people who refuse to accept the official fairy tales. And if you want the unfiltered truth about money, power, and who really controls the game, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Official history tells us the Great Pyramid was built around 2560 BCE during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu. A tomb, a monument, a religious symbol. That's the official story, but there's a massive problem. There was no mummy, no burial artifacts, no inscriptions describing any funerary rituals. Nothing. Instead, what we find is perfect geometry, precise astronomical alignment, and mathematical constants embedded so accurately that even our modern engineers struggle to explain how they did it. Let's get one thing straight. Ancient Egypt wasn't just a civilization of mystics and pharaohs. It was an economic machine, and its survival depended on one single thing: grain. Grain was their food. Grain was their wages. Grain was their taxes. Grain was their money. But there was a catch. Every single year, the Nile River flooded unpredictably. Some years brought incredible abundance, more grain than they knew what to do with. Other years brought famine and starvation. So, Egypt's rulers did something brilliant and ruthless. They centralized grain storage. They built massive, state-controlled granaries. The temples became the vaults. The priests became the administrators. Farmers would deposit their grain into these temple granaries, and in return, they received receipts papyrus records, clay tokens, basically claims on the stored food. These receipts then became tradable. You didn't need to carry around heavy sacks of grain. You just needed the promise of grain. Sound familiar? Because it should. This is where it gets really interesting. The temples and the priests running them realized something truly dangerous. Not everyone would redeem their grain at the same time. This was their aha moment. So, They started issuing more receipts than they had actual grain in the vaults. Fractional reserve banking was born right there in the sands of ancient Egypt. The temple was no longer just a religious center. It was a central bank. It controlled the supply. It controlled trust. It controlled the very survival of the people, and debt. Debt was the whip. It was enforced by law, by religion, and by violence. If you missed a payment, you lost your land. If you still couldn't pay, you lost your children to servitude. If you fell further, you lost your own freedom. Sound familiar? Just replace grain with dollars. Replace the temples with banks. Replace the priests with economists and central bankers. It's the exact same structure, the same leverage, the same illusion of value. So, where does the Great Pyramid fit into all of this? It wasn't separate from this system. It was its keystone, its ultimate symbol, and its functional core. Because empires don't survive on faith alone. They survive on accounting, on control. And once you understand that the Great Pyramid isn't just a monument to a dead king, it becomes something else entirely. It becomes a machine. A machine designed to standardize and control measurement, trade, and belief itself. Let's break down the evidence. The base of the Great Pyramid defines the royal cubit, the standard unit of length for the entire empire. This wasn't just for building, it was for surveying land, which was the basis of all wealth and all taxation. The pyramid's dimensions also encode the dimensions of the Earth with stunning accuracy. Its perimeter, if you convert it using the royal cubit, almost perfectly matches the length of a minute of latitude at the equator. Why would you put the dimensions of the planet on a tomb? You wouldn't. But you would if you were building a system for global or empire-wide trade and navigation. You'd need a universal standard. Then there's the math. The relationship between the pyramid's height and its perimeter is pi. The relationship between its apothem and half its base is phi. The golden ratio. These aren't just pretty numbers. They are fundamental constants of growth and proportion. They are the mathematical language of nature, and as it turns out, of finance. They govern everything from the spiral of a galaxy to the growth patterns of populations and the compounding of interest. By embedding these constants into their most sacred structure, the Egyptians were making a powerful statement. Our system is not man-made. It is natural. It is divine. It is unchangeable. Questioning the debt system was like questioning the will of the gods or the geometry of the universe itself. And what about the inside? The so-called King's Chamber, Queen's Chamber, and the Grand Gallery. Official history calls them empty rooms for a burial that never happened. But what if they weren't rooms, but functional components? What if the Grand Gallery, with its complex corbelled ceiling and strange grooves, was part of a mechanism? A mechanism for precise measurement, perhaps of grain volume, weight, or even time, using water or sand. It was a National Bureau of Standards, sanctified by the gods. It was the place you went to verify that your grain receipt, your clay token, your measure of land, was accurate according to the one true, state-controlled standard. The entire structure was a monumental piece of propaganda, a psychological anchor for the world's first large-scale debt-based economy. It screamed a single message from the Giza Plateau across the entire empire. We control the standard, okay? We control the count. We control the calendar. We control the debt, okay? We control you. It wasn't a tomb for a dead pharaoh, okay? It was the central server for a living economic matrix. And this is the key, okay? The system we live in today, the one that feels so overwhelming and complex, is not new. The digital dollars in your bank account are just the modern equivalent of those papyrus grain receipts. The interest on your credit card is the same tool that temple priests use to claim the wealth and labor of the farmers. The illusion is the same, the idea that money is a neutral object of value, when in reality, it is a system of control. The Great Pyramid wasn't a prototype, it was the finished model. It was version 1.0 of the financial operating system we are all still running today. By hiding this financial machine in plain sight, disguised as a religious monument, its creators achieved the ultimate goal. They made the system invisible. They made it sacred. They made it unquestionable. And for 4,500 years, that fundamental design has been copied, refined, and scaled up from ancient temples to Wall Street skyscrapers. But the core logic remains identical. Issue more claims than assets. Control the ledger. Enforce the debt. The next time you look at your bank statement or feel the stress of a mortgage payment, remember the Great Pyramid. You're not just dealing with a modern bank. You are interacting with the oldest and most successful system of control ever designed. But the first step to changing the game is to know the rules and to understand who wrote them. And they wrote them in stone a very, very long time ago. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. If this blew your mind, hit the like button and share this video with someone who needs to see it. And don't forget to subscribe for more truths they don't want you to know. See you in the next one. Have you ever looked at the Great Pyramid of Giza and thought it was just a giant, fancy tomb for a pharaoh? That's what they teach us in school, right? But what if I told you that's a lie? A comfortable story to hide a much more disturbing truth. The Great Pyramid wasn't just a symbol of power, it was a tool, a blueprint for a system of control that has dominated humanity for thousands of years and still runs our world today. Stick with me, because what I'm about to reveal will change how you see everything, from ancient history to your own bank account. Let's start with the math. The pyramid's design isn't random. If you take the perimeter of its base and divide it by twice its height, you get the value of pi, 3.14159. The mathematical constant that defines a circle. Its four sides are aligned with the cardinal directions north, south, east, and west, with an accuracy of less than 1/1/20th of a degree. This precision is staggering, even for modern engineers. It also mirrors the dimensions of the Earth on a specific scale. Now, ask yourself a simple question. Why would a tomb need this level of global measurement accuracy? It wouldn't, but an economic system would. A global trade network would. Imagine you're an ancient priest. You're not just a mystic talking to gods. You're part of an elite class of administrators. You're a mathematician, an astronomer, and most importantly, an accountant. You understand that if you can standardize measurement, the length of a rope, the weight of a stone, the volume of a basket of grain, you can control trade. And if you control trade, you control wealth. And if you control wealth, you control the people. The pyramid was the central bank of its time, the gold standard, the physical anchor for an entire economic system. It wasn't just built to honor a dead king. It was built to manage a living empire. This system wasn't just about economics. It was deeply moralized. Debt wasn't simply a financial obligation. It was a sin. You owed a debt to the gods for a good harvest. You owed a debt to the state for protection. You were born into a system of obligation, a web of debt from which there was no escape. The priests, acting as intermediaries for the gods, were the ultimate creditors. This brilliant fusion of religion and finance created a psychological prison. How can you argue with a god? How can you default on a loan to the universe itself? And this powerful idea, this operating system for society, didn't stay buried in the sands of Egypt. It spread. Phoenician traders, the logistics network of the ancient world, carried it across the Mediterranean. The Babylonians codified it in their laws. The Romans perfected it for financing their legions and vast public works. During the Middle Ages, the Knights Templar and Venetian banking houses refined it further. They discovered something revolutionary: goldsmith receipts. People would store their gold with a trusted goldsmith who would issue a paper receipt. Soon, people started trading the receipts instead of the heavy gold. The paper became the money. The same logic as the Egyptian grain stores, just with a new name. Here's where the real magic trick happens. Let's go back to the ancient temple granary. Farmer deposits 100 bags of grain for safekeeping. The temple scribe issues him 100 clay tablets, or receipts, each representing 1 bag of grain. The farmer can then use these tablets to pay for goods and services, but the priests notice something. Only about 10 or 20% of people ever come back at the same time to redeem their grain. The rest of the grain just sits there. So, what do? They get creative. They start issuing extra receipts. Even though there are only 100 bags of grain in the vault, they might issue 200, 300, or even more receipts. These extra receipts are created from thin air. They are an illusion. But as long as people believe in them, they circulate as real money. This is the birth of fractional reserve banking. The temple doesn't just give them away. They lend them out primarily to the politically connected elites, and they charge interest. This new money enters the economy, creating debt that grows and compounds over time. Everything seems fine for a while. The economy booms. But then, a crisis hits. A drought, a flood, a famine. People panic. They rush to the temple to redeem their receipts for the grain they desperately need. But the grain isn't there. The granaries are quickly emptied, but hundreds of worthless receipts are still in circulation. The system collapses. People starve. In the ensuing chaos, the elites, who were in on the secret and held the real assets, swoop in and buy up land and property for pennies on the dollar from the desperate and ruined common folk. Then, the cycle resets. The powerful become more powerful, and the poor lose what little they had. This wasn't a bug in the system, it was the feature. It was a designed mechanism for wealth transfer. Now, let's fast forward a few thousand years to today. Does any of this sound familiar? Should. Modern banks operate on the exact same principle of fractional reserve, but now it's digital and far more extreme. When you deposit $100 in your bank account, the bank is legally required to keep only a small fraction of that, sometimes as low as 10%, or in some cases, even zero. They can then lend out the other $90. Money that is pure debt. Scale of this is mind-boggling. Global debt has now surpassed $300 trillion. This debt can never be repaid. It was never meant to be. It's a control mechanism. Your money buys less. It's a silent tax that steals your purchasing power. Your wages can't keep up with the rising cost of living, but the prices of asset stocks, real estates skyrocket. Why? Because the people closest to the money printer, the banks and large corporations, get the new money first and buy up these assets before their prices adjust. It's the same wealth transfer mechanism as in ancient Egypt, just more sophisticated. The rich get richer, and you get poorer. This is the ultimate moral hazard. The people who create the risk face no consequences. They get the profits, and we, the public, get the bill. The Great Pyramid is the perfect symbol for this enduring hierarchy. A massive, broad base of workers supporting a tiny, narrow peak. The structure is incredibly stable, held together by the weight of the stones above. But our modern financial system isn't built of stone. It's built on something far more fragile: belief, confidence. The entire system works only as long as we all believe that the digital numbers in our accounts represent real value. If everyone tried to withdraw their money at once, a global bank run, the whole illusion would evaporate in an instant. This is why the narrative is so fiercely controlled. Why independent thinkers are ridiculed. Why asking difficult questions about how money works is discouraged. We're told it's too complicated for us to understand. We're told to trust the experts, the modern-day high priests at the central banks. From the temples of Egypt to the towers of Wall Street, the code hasn't changed, only the costumes and the technology. The ancient system was slow, limited by clay tablets and ships. Today's system is digital, global, and instantaneous, which means the next collapse won't be a regional famine. It will be a systemic, worldwide crisis. The institutions we've built on borrowed time and phantom money will eventually demand payment. The Great Pyramid still stands as an honest monument to hierarchy. Our modern system hides its pyramid scheme in plain sight, disguised by complex jargon and patriotic flags. So, as you go about your day, paying with your credit card or watching your savings, ask yourself, are we really any wiser than the ancient Egyptians? Or are we just walking the same path, wearing better suits towards a predictable collapse? If this video made you stop and think, share it with someone who needs to see it. And if you want to keep exploring the truth without the filters, make sure you subscribe. Because the pyramid never disappeared. It just went digital. Thanks for watching.